The 1970s, a decade of bold experiments, questionable fashion, and even more questionable cars. While some vehicles became timeless icons, others left a lasting impression for all the wrong reasons. Today, we're taking a worldwide tour of the 10 ugliest cars of the 1970s, cars that made people stop, stare, and wonder what the designers were thinking. These are not just ugly cars. They're missteps in style, proportion, and taste, spanning continents and manufacturers. Buckle up, because some of these machines are truly bewildering. Number 10, 1972 to 1974, BMW E93.0 CS. The BMW E93 CS is a case of a car that tries to be elegant, but ends up looking a little confused. On paper, it was a beautiful Grand Tourer, a long hood, flowing roofline, and luxurious interior materials that spoke of German engineering excellence. But then you hit the front end, and things go sideways. Those stacked rectangular headlights, not round like most BMWs of the era, give the car a robotic, almost anxious expression, like it's perpetually squinting at something it doesn't understand. Add to that a grille that seems too small for the broad front end, and the result is a car that doesn't quite know what it wants to be. Enthusiasts admire its handling and engine performance. After all, the inline-six was smooth and potent for the time. But no amount of mechanical perfection can fix a front end that looks like it got lost on the way to the design studio. Even the interior, while luxurious, can't save it. The seats are comfy, yes, but the dashboard layout feels cramped in contrast to the long, sleek exterior BMW was trying to innovate, to merge elegance with sportiness. But they ended up with a car that looks like it was made by a committee that couldn't agree on what sleek really meant. Number 9, 1974 to 1978, Nissan Cherry. The Nissan Cherry, known as the Datsun 100A or 120A in export markets, is a car that immediately raises eyebrows. Its design is bewildering, tall, narrow, and almost box-like. The proportions seem completely off. The front end angles sharply downward, giving it a perpetually angry expression, while the rear seems to sag under its own weight, as if it's defeated before it even starts. The roofline is high and flat, lacking the elegance or flow of other cars of the era, and the tiny wheels appear swallowed by the tall body. Underneath this questionable styling, the Cherry was meant to be a practical, affordable compact car to rival small European imports. Engine options were modest, typically a 1.2 or 1.4-liter inline-4, producing less than 70 horsepower, enough to move the car around town but never fast enough to inspire excitement. Suspension was adequate for city driving, but the tall, narrow proportions made handling twitchy, especially in corners. The public reaction was mixed. People appreciated its affordability and reliability, but visually it became a punchline. Magazine reviewers called it awkward and uninspired, and it certainly didn't help that more stylish Japanese competitors like the Toyota Corolla or Honda Civic were hitting the market at the same time. Today, the Nissan Cherry is remembered as one of the more perplexing compact cars of the 1970s. Not hated for performance, but simply for looking like it got drawn by a child who hadn't seen a car before. Number 8, 1973 to 1977, Lancia Beta Coupe. Number 8 goes to the Lancia Beta Coupe, a car that promised Italian style but delivered awkward geometry. The front is flat and elongated, headlights small and recessed, and fenders flare sharply in a way that draws attention to the car's height instead of elegance. The rear abruptly slopes down, creating a wedge shape that feels unbalanced and unfinished. From some angles it almost looks modern, but for most it looks like a blocky toy. Inside, the Beta offered sporty seating and a decent dashboard layout, but interior quality didn't always match the price tag. Under the hood, the engine was a modest 4-cylinder, producing between 90 and 115 horsepower depending on the model. Performance was acceptable, handling was light and agile, but the car's awkward exterior often stole attention for all the wrong reasons. Reviews were mixed. Italian enthusiasts praised the engineering, while international buyers often called it strange or even unattractive. The Beta Coupe stands as an example of Italian risk-taking in the 1970s. Sometimes it produced stunning beauty, sometimes awkward miscalculations. The Beta falls squarely into the latter category, a car that will always be remembered for its unusual proportions, rather than performance or comfort. Number 7, 1974 to 1978, Pontiac Ventura. At number 7, we have the Pontiac Ventura. This car tried to be an economy car with a sporty twist, but ended up looking like neither. The front end is long and flat, the narrow headlights fail to give it character, and the grille is uninspired. The rear is boxy and featureless, with no curves or lines to break up the monotony. Viewed from the side, the car looks compressed, awkward, and oddly top-heavy, like someone stretched it the wrong way. Under the hood, buyers could choose a small inline-6 or an optional V8, providing basic power for commuting, but nothing thrilling. Handling was average, the interior was bland, and comfort was standard for the era. But the real crime was the styling. No amount of mechanical competence could make this car look exciting. The public largely ignored the Ventura, and it faded into the background compared to flashier Pontiac models like the Firebird, or Chevelle magazines described it as uninspired, and enthusiasts rarely remembered it. Today, the Ventura is mostly a curiosity, a car that failed to make an impression except for how strangely it looked for a mid-size sedan. Number 6. 1970 to 1975, Fiat 850 Spider. Number 6 goes to the Fiat 850 Spider, a tiny Italian roadster. It's easy to see why people were intrigued at first glance. Its rounded body is cute, the tiny hood and stubby rear give it personality, but the proportions are all wrong. The headlights stick out, giving it an insect-like appearance, and the roofline is unexpectedly tall, making the car look top-heavy. From the side, it appears almost cartoonish, as if it could tip over in a strong wind. Under the hood, the engine was tiny, just 903 cubic centimeters, producing less than 50 horsepower in early models. Enough for city driving, but not for highways. Handling was light and nimble thanks to its small size, but visually it looked awkward every time it hit the road. The 850 Spider was charming to some, ridiculous to others. At the time, it gained a niche following, but most casual buyers were puzzled by its proportions. Today, it's remembered as a small, quirky car that tried to be fun and stylish, but ended up looking perpetually awkward. A perfect example of 1970s European small car design gone slightly wrong. Number 5. 1974 to 1977, Citroën SM. Number 5 is the Citroën SM, a car that looked like it came from the future. But for some reason, the future was terrifying. Designed as a luxury performance car, it was sleek, long, and low-slung, with sharp lines and a pointed front nose. The pop-up headlights added to the futuristic appearance, but the overall effect was unsettling, giving the car the face of a praying mantis on steroids. From the side, the car's wedge shape looks elegant at first glance, but the proportions are so extreme that the rear seems almost non-existent, leaving the SM with a stretched alien silhouette. Mechanically, the SM was impressive. A Maserati V6 under the hood, hydro-pneumatic suspension, and front-wheel drive that made it glide over bumps like no other car of its era. But that engineering brilliance came with headaches. The complex suspension required frequent maintenance, parts were expensive, and reliability was questionable. For many drivers, owning an SM became a full-time commitment to keeping it running. Despite its issues, the SM captured attention everywhere it went. People loved it for its audacity and innovation, but plenty also found it bizarre and even ugly. While collectors today treasure the Citroën SM, in its own time, it polarized audiences. Some saw beauty and engineering mastery. Others saw a car that looked ready to crawl off the road and into a science fiction movie. Number 4. 1970, Porsche 914. Coming in at number 4, we have the Porsche 914. On paper, this mid-engine sports car was meant to be a collaboration between Porsche and Volkswagen, an affordable entry into the world of exotic cars. But the execution left much to be desired. The 914's design was polarizing from day one. Its targa top, sharp angles, and low-slung body gave it a blocky, almost cartoonish appearance. The pop-up headlights didn't help either, making the front end look perpetually surprised, like the car was reacting to a bad joke. Under the hood, the 914 was offered with either a modest 4-cylinder or a flat-6 engine. Performance-wise, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't Porsche sports car exhilarating either. The handling was decent thanks to the mid-engine layout, but the interior was Spartan, hard plastics, minimal padding, and ergonomics that felt like they were designed by committee. For a car that wanted to be exotic, it looked and felt oddly cheap. And decades later, enthusiasts still debate whether it's charming or just plain awkward. Number 3, 1970 to 1975, Saab Sonett 3. Next up, the Saab Sonett 3. Saab tried to combine its aviation-inspired engineering with a small sports car, and what came out was unique, to say the least. The body was long and narrow, with exaggerated curves that looked like someone tried to squeeze a futuristic jet into car form. The front end is dominated by a wide, low grille and tiny round headlights that make the car look perpetually grumpy. The rear flares are overdone, giving it an almost cartoonish stance. Under the hood, the Sonett 3 was underpowered, a small two-stroke engine or later a 1.7-liter four-cylinder that struggled to move the car briskly. Coupled with a fiberglass body that sometimes flexed in ways it shouldn't, the car could feel unstable on corners. The interior was a minimalistic cockpit reminiscent of an airplane, with awkwardly placed gauges and controls that required a learning curve. Overall, the Sonett 3 is one of those cars that enthusiasts love to talk about, but for anyone just glancing at it in a parking lot, it looks truly odd. Number 2, 1974, Sebring Vanguard City Car. At number 2, we have the Sebring Vanguard City Car. This tiny electric car was ahead of its time in concept, but its execution was less than glamorous. Shaped almost like a wedge of cheese on wheels, the city car was a true microcar nightmare. Its narrow body, awkwardly sloped nose, and tiny wheels made it look like a toy that someone forgot to scale up. Visibility inside was decent thanks to the big windows, but the exterior looked absurd, especially when parked next to any normal-sized car. Power came from a small electric motor that barely managed city speeds. The interior was stripped down to the bare essentials: a bench seat, a few gauges, and little else. The doors opened forward like a mini version of a gull wing, adding some novelty but doing nothing for the aesthetic. The city car might have been practical for short commutes, but in terms of looks, it's one of the ugliest, most awkward vehicles of the decade. A car that truly makes you double take. Number 1. 1975 Ford Granada. Taking the top spot, the 1975 Ford Granada is a car that aimed for European sophistication, but ended up looking awkward and bulky. Its front end is oversized, the body is boxy, and chrome trim is everywhere. Not classy, just overwhelming. From every angle, it feels unbalanced, like the designers couldn't decide what they wanted it to be. Under the hood, the Granada was slow and uninspiring. The standard V6 barely moved the nearly 3,000-pound car, and the handling was clunky. It certainly didn't feel like the European luxury Ford promised. Inside, the cabin tried to be fancy with faux wood trim and plastic details, but it ended up looking cluttered and cheap. The Granada quickly became famous, not for elegance, but for its awkward proportions and dated style. Even decades later, it's remembered as one of the ugliest and most awkwardly styled cars of the 1970s.